frankly, you know, it's not that hard. How many people out of the thousands, the 14,000 members of AHA, attend the business meeting? It is not our goal to somehow staff up the business meeting and pass these resolutions. Our goal is to have the council do what they did the last time, which was send them out for a full vote and debate by the AHA membership. And we think that would be democratic and it would be intellectually healthy. So we ask you to vote to suspend the rules so that they can be considered and passed at the business meeting, with the expectation, indeed, we would be disturbed if they were not sent out for a full vote by the membership. The last time this happened, our resolutions was, if memory serves, the largest vote ever recorded in any AHA election. So we're looking for that open, full debate and see how the chips fall. Thank you.
Kat had to run a huge struggle to be able to do it. If Palestinian scholars are regularly denied from going to archives, if Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza Strip have a hard time getting to their universities, if universities are being shot at, and closed down, if students from Gaza can never go anywhere and study, then these are all things that are a part of our very narrowly defined academic responsibility. I think that actually calling on the U.S. to enforce freedom of academic freedoms and freedom of movement for American citizens who are going to teach at a Palestinian university is not really in any way controversial. I don't see how you can make that into any problematic statement.
David Greenberg, Rutgers University. I want to start, Rusty, with really praising your opening statement, recognizing that there was real division among historians against the war over BDS, and that as a result of those very intensely felt divisions, things became inflamed, and as a result, the decision was made that the question of a boycott would not be on the table, that it was too divisive for a community like HAW as a community to go there. And to think about, as Barbara Weinstein talked about reasoning by analogy, to then analogize to the wider community of which we are all also a part, the AHA. And that just as BDS might very deeply divide historians against the war, so these broader questions too very deeply divide the AHA. Many of us who do identify as left or liberal, many others who do not, and people have all kinds of views about Israel, Palestine, and the Middle East. And so that the same sensitivity and recognition of what a scholarly society, can and should do, and to be a welcoming home to all its members, many who come here for years and decades. That to think about these resolutions, which may not be controversial to our wing of the AHA, but are to the AHA more broadly just as divisive and inflammatory as BDS might be to historians against the war. So to use that same recognition that Historians Against the War was able to bring to the consideration of tabling the boycott issue, to these wider resolutions and what that will mean to the AHA as a broader community, as a society that encompasses people with all range of political views and views on the Middle East.
Yes, Barbara.
I just want to very quickly address that, because I actually was president of the AHA exactly the year when the Iraq resolution was passed, was circulated to the entire membership. And I think it's very important to emphasize that there were people who were very upset. I mean, it passed with more than 75% of the those who voting in favor of the resolution. I did receive some postcards and letters, not entirely polite, saying that they were going to stop being a member of the AHA because of this resolution, etc. So there is always going to be, I think, a small number of people who will be really upset and who will stray away from the organization as a result. But I think it's very important to emphasize that it's not necessary for an organization to have to think with one mind and never, sort of never address difficult issues in order to remain a functioning organization. And that resolution passed. I actually think, in some sense, it gave people a stronger sense of their connection and the meaning of being a member of the AHA. I think it was a very small minority who felt really upset and no longer belong. So I have a very different perspective on this than you do.
Then did you want to just clarify?
Yeah, generally historians proceed from evidence, not from presumptions or speculation. So let me clarify. HA has not tabled BDS. We brought these resolutions because we thought it was politically, tactically sensible. And we did it on the basis of advice from people, and I will name them, people like Sherna Gluck, who've been working on this for a long time. And they said, and I said myself, I know AHA, if we bring in a BDS resolution, we'll get blown out of the water. That's not a tactically smart thing to do. We looked at the MLA, talked to my friend Bruce Robbins. So I'm not telling you in any shape or form that this is a entering wedge or stalking horse. We simply made tactical decisions. We did not table BDS, and I do not appreciate, personally, you claiming that you've somehow access to some secret minutes or something like that. We never did any such thing.
I was responding to Rusty's remark that because it was divisive among HAW, that this wasn't, going to be subject.
I actually, let me just clarify. I actually didn't. It was not my intention to explain that as the reason, because in actuality, I'm not on that committee, and I didn't even know what the reasons were. What I did want to acknowledge, so just to be clear about that, it just wasn't even part of that process. But what I was trying to acknowledge, and I think it's obvious here, and I actually want to have us calm down a little bit, is that, I think there's no question that if we go around this room that there are tremendous common values in this room, and even on the question of Israel-Palestine and how we assess responsibility, there's a lot of commonality here. I think Alice really has to have, recognize that. What I was trying to say at the beginning is that it's simply to acknowledge the reality that even within Historians Against the War, there was a vote. We had a split steering committee, and that from our membership we were hearing diverse things, and and a hope that somehow or other the fact that I think there are so many shared values here, can enable us to kind of talk these things through. And I actually think the panel did a great job of doing that in terms of showing, because there's many issues here, not just where you stand on academic and cultural boycott. I don't know if that clarified or made things more confused here.
What I liked about it precisely was its attention to a deeply important issue of scholarship, of the protection of archives and the work of oral historians, the movement of scholars like ourselves. And the second thing is that it's a resolution that's very important to colleagues whom I know at Birzeit University, at Al-Quds University, at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and at Tel Aviv. And a philosopher that I know at Tel Aviv wrote, whom I told about this proposal, said, "Thank you. This is very important to us." So whether or not this resolution passes, I think it's constructive. I hope it would, but it's constructive to be discussed, to get out to the membership, and whether it does in fact affect policy, it will be a meaningful support to people, Palestinians, Israelis, Jews, Arabs, who are trying to work for the same goals of academic freedom and scholarship that we care about. So I think it would be very constructive. I appreciate your work in finding a precise resolution rather than one that would have been so widely considered.
Back there? Yes.
Isn't our main responsibility?
Can you say your name?
My name is Sharon Musher from Richard Stockton College of New Jersey. Isn't our main responsibility as historians to investigate the evidence, interpret it as accurately as possible, and attempt to ascertain the facts? Each of the three central claims in Hawes' resolutions are contestable. It's unclear how many foreign academics have been denied entry to Israel and the occupied territories, and how those numbers compare to actions in other countries, including the United States. It's uncertain that the Oral History Archive at Islamic University and records in it were actually destroyed. And it may be that the facts on the ground are shifting, given that just this past week, Israel permitted 54 Gazans to go through Eretz Crossing, which is usually only for humanitarian purposes, to study in Israel, the West Bank, and abroad. Isn't our job as historians to ask questions without assuming we already know the answer?
Violations of Palestinian academic freedom. That's only in the West Bank. We're not talking about the structured way in which Israeli intelligence supervises the educational system of Palestinian Arabs who are citizens of Israel.
Let's have panels, let's have discussions, let's do that then. Let's not have you assert that.
Set one up
Okay,
then.
all right.
These are not facts that are subject to debate. Everybody who knows anything about this situation knows that this is the issue. The debate in Israel is whether or not, for the security of the state of Israel, we ought to infringe on Palestinian rights in this way, or whether or not, for the security of all of us in the future, we ought not to.
Okay, back there.
Danny Walkowitz. I would not have supported an academic boycott that involved academic freedom, but I think I'm impressed that this resolution, it seems to me, is precisely about the defense of academic freedom, for which is not only appropriate for historians to be involved, but there are precedents in which the historical profession is regularly involved in those kinds of rules. Two to mention in particular. One is that it has an active leadership within the association that is always going to Congress in defense of the opening up of archives, freeing of those kind of archives, and has been complaining about when those archives have been closed to us, or blacked out, or records have been made inaccessible. That's a regular charge that the AHA has taken on our name. The other is just to remember that there's a long history in which I think the profession has both experienced these kinds of problems in its own right and not been in the forefront in defending them. Whether they were the infringement of the rights of travel of somebody like Chandler Davis, or whether they were Edward Thompson or Eric Hobsbawm, there were many historians who historically were not able to come to the United States, and we had every reason as historians to want them there and to defend them, and in a parallel way, I think we want to be able to do that as well. I don't see this document as, in fact, an article ready to be published in the AHA with footnotes. I do have confidence in what I do know from the scholars that I have respected in Middle Eastern studies, that this is a fairly straightforward resolution about which there might be some quibbles, but the general tone and strategy and meaning of the document, it seems to me, is not deeply contestable and one that ought to be supported.